This is the fun stuff about live production. Sometimes your tech just decides it's got other ideas. We're going to wait for 2 minutes and bring everyone back in, and then we're going to kickstart this again. I don't know what the hell was happening there. Did I just turn into like this crazy green like halo? I thought I was becoming God for a second there. Oh, it's funny, guys. You know, in the old days, I would have used to like pack it in and just shit my pants. But now it's just like, that's just part of what happens when you're playing with some tech. So, guys, we're going to wait 30 seconds and then we're going to pull this again. Not really sure what went on there, but anyway, we're going to reconvene. Come on back in. The Green Lantern. Yeah, that's exactly what it was, Tez. So random, mate. Just blew up in front of me. I don't know if it's the new update of Mac that I just installed or not, but anyway, let's wait 30 seconds and then we're going to kickstart back off again. The Green Lantern, yeah, that's exactly what it was. All right, so let's get stuck into this. I'm going to count us in again for the recording of the podcast, guys, and if there's any future issues, I'm just going to drop this one and reconvene. So on the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. Now, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about procrastination. So this is going to be a really good fit for today. I think we're going to go really, really deep on this topic. What I first wanted to do is really just talk about congratulating everyone in Better Body Academy. Now, the reason is that at the start of September, we set a challenge to our crew, okay? So if you've been living under the rock, you've missed it. But the challenge that we set to our crew is that we needed to get 70 people minimum hitting 250,000 steps. And if we did that, I'd give a bunch of cash to the Sydney Children's Hospital. Well, I think a lot of people was like, I don't know if I can do 250,000 steps over the course of a month. But guess what? We had a total so far that's been entered of it come up to be 78 people that hit 250,000 steps. So in terms of a group effort, we should be bloody impressed with ourselves. We had 41 women and 37 men, so we were headed by the effort of all of the girls. And I'll just let you know that, the cash goes to the kids. So well done to Jim Norval and Cara Stewart, who led the pace with a ridiculous amount of steps. Well done to you guys. I also want to just mention, this is the first episode that I've done since running the men's retreat. And I cannot begin to explain to you guys how amazing this was if you weren't there. I want to just thank all of the boys who participated in the event, gave their vulnerability. It was literally the most connected experience that I could ever have imagined. And it now has me tonguing for the next one. Whether that's a women's one, a mixed one, or another men's one, I would love to do them because I really do think that there's power in proximity. You know, I think online coaching is the absolute way forward because we can surround you, but there is still massive power in meeting up in person and being able to discuss this stuff in person. Okay, so anyhow, let's go into today's episode. I want to do my best to answer a question that one of our new lads, Brian, asked into our Academy Facebook group. He said, look, this is a problem that I should probably bring to the coaches, but I thought I might as well reach out to the group first, and feedback from all of you will be helpful. He just said simply, what is the defeat to procrastination? I feel it's a crutch that I've lived with all of my life. Maybe it come from my father, and I want to eliminate it as soon as possible. What can you suggest? So this is the template for this podcast. Hands up from you if you're watching this one live. Is this a thing that you suffer from? Do you feel that you could have asked this question yourself? I procrastinate a lot. I'm a chronic procrastinator. I don't know why I do it, but I do it. So listen, the truth of it is, procrastination is extremely common. It is so common for people to either suffer it chronically or at some point in their life. Maybe there's been a trigger. And I want to make this episode as practical as I can. So we're going to talk about what it is, why it happens, and what to do about it. So to start with, let's answer the question, like, what is procrastination? I think we have to get a base for it first, because it's not laziness. As someone who's a chronic procrastinator, you probably feel a little bit like there's something wrong with you, maybe. Is that how you feel? Like, I'm just a chronic procrastinator. There's something wrong with me. But humans have been procrastinating for thousands of years. In fact, the Greek philosophers, you may have heard of people like Socrates and Aristotle, they had a word for it. They called it akrasia. And akrasia just basically meant the idea of acting against what you know you should do. Even when you know the thing that you should do is important, you act against that. That is procrastination. It's the irrational delay of a task, even though you know that there are negative consequences to that delay, right? It's convincing yourself that it's far more important to tidy up your office than actually start the massive project that's due in a couple of days. It's telling yourself that you're going to wait until you've lost 20 kilograms till you start at the gym, when you'll be less intimidated. It's rationalizing that you can't do your weekly check-in photos, even though they take 5 minutes, because you've got kids' sport on all weekend. And I've no doubt if you want to share your procrastinator, the thing that you do, pop it into the comments. So a good next question to ask is, why do I procrastinate? Look, I'm going to go deep on this, okay? There are a couple of levels to this. But what I want to do is introduce you guys to an idea called present bias. Present bias. If you understand this idea, it's going to make sense why procrastination happens. Okay, so what is present bias? Present bias is our human tendency, as in like it happens to everyone, to focus more on the present situation than the future when we're making decisions. Does that make sense? We favor the present over the future. We are hardwired, in fact, to settle for a smaller reward in the future than wait for in the present, then wait for a larger reward in the future. We call this instant gratification. Yeah? And so let's give you an example. While a beautiful, sexy body might be amazing in 1 to 2 years, a donut and 10 beers is really good right now. So who feels that? Like, let me know in the comments, guys, who feels that as like the short-term gratification is the hardest thing for me to overcome. I'm so inundated by the temptation that lies with me here right now. And so you guys, a lot of you have read what I think is one of the best books available to read, and that is Atomic by James Clear. And in Atomic Habits, he talks about this idea of two selves. He has a great way of explaining this. And I think if we understand this idea or this analogy, it will really help. He says that you have two selves. You have your present self and your future self. So when you set a goal like losing weight, or maybe you want to write a book or learn a language, you are actually making plans for your future self, because you're envisaging what your life is going to be like in 10, 20, 50 years. So you're making plans for your future self. And when you think about making plans for your future self, it's pretty easy to see the value in doing that, right? Because you're aware of the long-term benefits. This is obvious. You know that something's going to happen in the future, and you're going to be in a better position if you can get your future right. That's because the future self, remember there's two selves, the future self values long-term rewards. However, the future self can only set goals because it's the present self as in you now, you're the only version of you that can take action. Does this make sense? So just to recap, imagine there's two of you, there's a future you and there's a present you. Your future you creates goals for the future because you know the value of that, but the present self is the only one that can take action. And so, when it comes to actually making a decision, it's the present self that's making the decision. It's no longer your future self that's making it. Does this make sense? Your future self makes the goals, but your present self is the only one that can actually do the work, take the action, make the decision. Now you're in the present moment. Your brain is thinking about the present self. And what research has showed is that the present self really only cares about instant gratification, not long-term payoff, aka donuts and beers. Now, as a coach, understanding this has been fundamental for me. I spend hours upon hours upon hours trying to get people to think about their future self and then take action. But the problem is that I'm talking to you now in the present. So I'm thinking to myself all the time, how can I, in the content that I write, in the messages that I'm delivering, in the podcasts that I'm doing, I'm thinking to myself, how can I get this person who is 30 kilos overweight to not see what's coming to them if they keep going the way they're going in 5 or 10 years? Like for me, heart attack, diabetes, stroke, continued depression, poverty, I mean, the list goes on. These are all terrible and preventable things that we continue to procrastinate about, right? But a lot of us just can't take action in the present moment. That's how powerful present bias actually is. It's so powerful. The cost of procrastination, when you think about it, could be huge in terms of health, quality of life, your finances, and much more. Let's talk about creating massive feelings of guilt and shame that lead to anxiety and depression when you can't get yourself to do things. And I might refer to Brian here, who popped the question up in the first place. I'm guessing when he says to himself, why can't I just make myself do the things that I need to do? Like, there's a level of guilt and shame around that. Like, it's not a great feeling, right? And it doesn't make you feel great about yourself. But then there are bigger consequences. There are actually life consequences, life-threatening consequences. When a person becomes so debilitated by procrastination, they actually risk death. So imagine a person putting off going to a doctor when they're suffering a certain illness, sickness, symptoms, but they put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off because they're procrastinating. They go to the doctor too late, and by that time, it's the condition that they're suffering from is... This procrastination thing is a big thing. Financially, if you're a business owner, I want you to think about how much productivity is lost by your business from people just putting off the work that needs to be done. And if you're an employee who hates your job and you're just not that amped about your job, think of all the amount of time that you honestly waste that is unproductive because you're procrastinating about stuff that you know that should be done but you don't want to do. So the cost of this is actually huge. So a good question to ask is, why is it then that some people take action and other people procrastinate? So we've established that long-term consequences, like a heart attack, for example, or rewards, like a feeling of pride about your body, they generally don't motivate the present self. The present self isn't too motivated by those things. Avoidance of pain or long-term pleasure. So how is it that the entire world isn't overweight, broke, divorced, jobless, and bumming on the beach? In short, some people, and you will know if this is you are able to bring both future rewards and future punishments and the idea of those things into the present so that it's relevant for the present self. I'm going to say that again because it's really important that we understand that. For people who are able to take action, it's because you've been able to drag future benefit and future pain into the present so that it's relevant for your present self. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments if that makes sense. If you've started a transformation of any kind, that's likely what's actually happened. Perhaps you were carrying a bunch of weight, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. Perhaps you were carrying a bunch of weight, you thought about starting, but it wasn't till the weight, which is in the future, become a problem in the present that you actually did something about it. Maybe one of these things happened. Maybe you got on a plane and you couldn't do up the seatbelt. Or maybe you were getting dressed for a wedding and you dragged that beautiful suit or dress out of the closet. You put it on and it didn't fit anymore. That's a problem in the present. Maybe you went to the doctor to get a routine check, just your once a year check, and your doctor said, oh, listen, you've got pre-diabetes. Maybe you went to the beach for the first time with your kiddo and all of a sudden you had this weird crippling fear that you wouldn't take your shirt off. And that's never happened before. Maybe you finally conceived of a child after years of trying, and then you realized that you could hardly touch your toes, let alone keep up with a 5-year-old. So I could give you endless examples of this. But what's happened here is what's called the procrastination action threshold has crossed. You've gone from procrastinating to taking action because something that was in the future is now right here in the present. Does that make sense? This is the moment that a person suddenly goes from thinking about it to actually doing something about it. And a better way to state this is that a person only takes action when the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of taking the action and making the change. Some examples. When the pain of staying overweight is worse than the pain or boredom in following a meal plan. So when the pain of continuing to drink alcohol and what that makes you in front of your family is more painful than the decision to go without alcohol and what that means. When the pain of avoiding the gym and feeling weak all of a sudden is more painful than the fear of going in, being intimidated into the gym. When finally the pain of having no money and opening your bank account and struggling week to week is finally a bigger problem than budgeting, preparing, getting some help to actually solve it. Here's another great example. When the pain of being alone for a period of time is less painful than the abusive relationship that you've been in. These are all things that people procrastinate about. And they procrastinate and stay stuck because the pain is not yet big enough to force the change. So to put it plainly, you change when the problem becomes extremely relevant now. This is why some of us will wait so long to do something important, but then right at the last minute, we'll just do the work and we'll tell everyone, well, it's because I work well under pressure. Perhaps true, but you can handle pressure. It's more likely the problem that you are not in enough pain to actually take the action when it matters. And as soon as you detect the pain and like, oh shit, this is due, now I get to work. And that's how most of us start our transformation. So I want to make a really important point here, which is the difference between making a commitment to starting soon and actually starting. Okay, because this is important. How many times have you kind of got yourself to the point where you think to yourself, okay, I'm starting tomorrow. So you make the mental decision, but then tomorrow comes and we back out last minute on taking action and following through. And we end up procrastinating for another few days, weeks, months, years. What's happening here? I want to explain this because if you understand this, then it helps you to do something about it. Your brain's very, very highest priority, as in above everything in life, is to keep you alive. It will do absolutely anything to ensure that you stay alive over everything else. This is the reason that humans have survived and thrived in the most crazy situations. The brain is hardwired first and foremost to keep you alive. So when you make a big decision to leave your comfort zone and do something hard, your protective brain kicks in and sees this as a threat to survival. Oh my God, Erin's going to jump out of a plane. Oh my God, Brian's going to go into the gym. Oh my God, someone's going to step on the scales and start doing their check-in photos. That instantly, and you guys would know this if you felt it before, that's the brain going into flight or fight response. This is why we get so anxious at the start of a transformation, because we're out of our comfort zone. We're in flight or fight response. A bunch of adrenaline's released, your heart rate rises, the muscles get primed for action because they're in a stressed state. The brain believes it's in a fight to survive, when actually the only thing that's happened is you're going for a job interview or you're starting with your coach on Monday. But it picks it up as a threat to survival. So the simple way to cool that hyper alert state is just to procrastinate for a little bit. We tell ourselves, we'll start interviewing for the job as soon as we've done our CV and had a haircut and done the course. So when we look good. Or we'll tell ourselves that we'll start the transformation when we're less busy after the holidays and when we've got time to focus on it. The moment we say, I'll start tomorrow, we're kidding ourselves into there being a mental commitment. But actually what it is the brain kicking into procrastination to try to get you out of that hyper-stressed mindset. Does this make sense? So you feel less anxious. So procrastination it's actually hardwired in us as a protective behavior to keep us alive. This is why the present self, it's all about pleasure and instant gratification, because those things are no threat to our existence. So we've gone deep in this, guys, and this is a long podcast because it's quite a deep, debilitating topic. Let's talk about how not to overcome procrastination. A lot of us, what we tend to do is just tell ourselves, I need to stop procrastinating, and wonder why that doesn't work. People treat procrastination as if it's a time management issue. So they go out and buy a bunch of books or do some courses or try to research some productivity hacks or apps to better manage their time. It's got nothing to do with managing your time. If you're a procrastinator, it's got nothing to do with managing your time and everything to do with managing your emotions. It's about managing your emotions. The first step to overcoming procrastination is actually to understand it so you're doing the right thing about it. You can buy all the business books in the world, it won't change shit. We need to bring awareness to how impactful it can be in our life and what our patterns are. I've got a friend that has read every single book around self-development but still can't understand why she's in the same space. Because reading books and listening to podcasts like this, but then doing nothing as a result, it's actually a form of procrastination. So in order to get something done, you need to do something. Having the understanding about what procrastination actually is, an emotional management issue, helps us to start overcoming it. If you just remember that your brain is hardwired for two things, survival and instant gratification, this alone can help you to overcome procrastination because you now know that you're not broken. There's not something useless about you. It's your brain doing its thing, keeping you alive and giving you short-term, that's what it wants. So there are many ways to skin a cat. I can go through a couple here, but it's actually about overcoming your emotions and doing what you don't feel like doing. And so one of the habits that I have is whenever I get the feeling where I notice that I'm trying to avoid something, what I do is ask myself, is this a red flag for something I actually really need to do? Think about that. Generally, when you're ruminating about something, you kind of get stuck in the pattern, but I use that as a beeping signal that is something I need to do. Because my brain is telling me, don't do that. It's not that I don't have procrastination, it's that I see it as an alert. So, let's look at some strategies. Well, one thing you can do is try making the rewards and the benefits of taking action appear sooner in the present. there was some amazing stuff to come out of the University of Pennsylvania. It's called temptation building. And I think this idea is amazing. Listen up. The strategy suggests that if you bundle a behavior that is good for you in the long run, think about what you procrastinate about. What is the behavior that's good for you in the long run? It might be going to the gym that you're procrastinating about all the time. If you bundle that behavior with a behavior that feels good in the short term, this bundling can help you move through the procrastination. Here are some examples. You might decide to bundle only watching Netflix while exercising on a treadmill or a stationary bike as a way to help you break your weight loss procrastination. That'd be a really good strategy. Or you might only eat out at a restaurant with your partner, something that's pleasurable now, but with something that you've procrastinated about. No phones, and dealing with your relationship struggles. So you will only go to a restaurant with no phone and a willingness or openness to talk to your partner about what you guys are struggling or hiding from each other with. So you're bundling something that is good for the future and bringing it in and tying it with something that's good in the present. Or maybe you will only allow yourself a glass of wine when you've tracked your calories and you've hit your protein target. Does that make sense? So just ask yourself, practically, what am I procrastinating? Like you guys would, as I'm doing this podcast,